Hello, Søren. This is a video to give you feedback on your task number 2. I'm going to begin with the overall structuring and organization of the text as a whole, what we call the global level, and then move slightly down towards the paragraph level. I have a few things to say about the local level, sort of word and sentence level, towards the end. But to begin with my general impression of your English, you write fluently, you convey your message well, so it's quite easy for me to understand what you're trying to say, what the nuances are. And I think a native speaker would be able to understand you quite easily. And that's one of the things that we're looking at for Stanek level 3, if you remember the descriptor in the task description of what a 3 is in writing. So you live up to that, no question. A couple of places you're not quite idiomatic. And what that means is that you don't write English completely the way that it's supposed to be written. So a native speaker would go, oh, that's a little off. Like a preposition, like if you were to say on when it's supposed to be in, or at when it's supposed to be next to. Or if you put an ing at the end of a verb, for instance, where it's not supposed to be. That's what we call not idiomatic. So every now and again there are instances of that, but it's not something that disturbs the meaning or in any way sort of hinders what you want to do with the text. And that's kind of the important thing when we're talking about professional writing, is that you can do with the language what you want to do. So it works for you, and it does that. So that's my general impression of your English. If I begin with the overall structure, I see that this text falls into major parts. I know why it does that, because that's how the task description was set. However, the thing that is puzzling me as a reader is why there is no connection between 1 and 2. That has to be stronger. However fragmented the task description is, the task given to you, your job is to create coherence all the way through. So that's the first thing I want to say to you, is that make sure that you've got coherence throughout the text. A way of doing that is to do an introduction, to write an introduction for the text that's about the text. In Danish we call it meta-language, which you may remember from your hovedopgave when you were at the basic officers course. Write something that gives the reader kind of a roadmap. I've used this metaphor a lot in the videos. It's like you're telling the reader, we're going to go from A and arrive at B. This is how we're going to do it. This is the steps that I'm taking in order to get to my conclusion. This is a task that asks you to discuss something. A discussion always has a conclusion of some kind. So we need to know how we get from A to B. That's what you tell me in the conclusion, in the introduction. When you move into the body text, you can then signpost, is what we call it. Where am I then according to this roadmap, if we stay with that metaphor? And you can refer back to what I'm now going to do. Is I'm going to describe something, then I'm going to discuss something, and then I'm going to contrast and compare 3 theories, blah, 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 so that I can follow along. If you had done the intro, you would have seen the disconnect between 1 and 2. Because you write your introduction after you've written your body text. You go back and kind of look at, did I actually do what I was intending to do? If not, you can change the introduction, change your mind about what your intention was, or you can go back and tweak the body text. That depends on the purpose. I will, however, say that the 2 parts individually work fairly well. In part 1, I want to say something about your paragraphs. Some of them are too short in certain places. If you look at the layout of the text, just visually, if they are sort of like maybe only 5 or 6 lines, that may be too short a paragraph. So go back and look at them and see, does the information, or do the information in that paragraph actually belong to a thesis sentence that you've mentioned above or that comes below? If so, just basically move it up, move it down. If there is a thesis sentence and it's still very short, you will have to consider if you need to elaborate more and develop that paragraph more so it becomes a bit longer. Otherwise, it seems fragmented and it makes you as a writer seem like you're not completely in control of your text. And you don't want that because that hurts your credibility. However, you do a much better job in part 2. So you do know how to do this. So look for part 2 because those are better paragraphs. Another thing, when you write, you do this sort of, you have like 3 main points that you want to get across. And you say there are 3 points about blah, 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 1, 2, 3. You do that twice in a row. And while that's a really kind of clear way of communicating, it is a bit repetitive. So a really good trick would be to try and rephrase it. So not use 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, but then just find some different words to convey the same message. So that's a little trick that you can use to improve the writing. At the local level, the word level, there are some errors that make, as I said earlier, your text a bit unidiomatic. There are no systematic errors though, so I can't say, okay, work on this particular subject, it will get better. What I think would be good for you is, given that this is early days, right, I haven't read much of your writing, obviously, what I think would benefit from was to read some more English. I don't know how much you read, or whether it's just professional, but what is sometimes beneficial is to go outside your normal kind of area of interest. Find something that challenges you a little bit, but keeps you interested at the same time. So you get some pleasure from reading it and it's not too difficult, because that sometimes helps us to imitate the language that we read. So that's a much easier way than going into every single error and trying to figure out, why is this wrong? It's much easier to just imitate good language. So see if you can squeeze in some reading every now and again of something that's outside your normal sphere of interest. So it's not professional necessarily, but something that interests you, and it's just a little bit difficult, but not too challenging, so that it makes it harder or makes it too laborious for you to read. Okay, I'm going to end it there. If there are any questions that you need to ask, you can drop me an email, or I will see you on Friday. Okay, bye.